Today's video is going to cover two cold cases that happened on the same day at the same location. They are the two unsolved murders of Abdul Bhatti and Greg Watson on the tragic day of Notting Hill Carnival 2000. 24 years later, people have been identified and arrested, but no one has had a conviction for any of these murders. I will first talk about what Notting Hill Carnival is, before moving on to what happened to Abdul Bhatti, and then finally Greg Watson. Notting Hill Carnival is a yearly festival held in West London to celebrate British Caribbean culture. It began officially in 1966 as a way to promote race relations, where people come together to have a nice fun time with plenty of music, food and good spirits. It attracts up to 2 million people annually from festival goers that have roots all over the world. Having a festival with that many people off guard celebrating unfortunately attracts trouble, as Notting Hill Carnival has had a long history of pickpocketing, muggings, assaults and even murders. If you live in London, you would hear about someone being stabbed during Notting Hill Carnival every year, but this is not a recent trend like the media tends to portray. 28th of August 2000. Notting Hill Carnival is in full swing. All of the festival goers are enjoying the warm weather, upbeat music and food stalls cooking all types of food. One of those people was 28-year-old salesman Abdul Bhatti. Abdul and his family had moved to West London from Wolverhampton 4 years before, in 1996. He was said to have been a very caring young man and a passionate football fan. He was at the carnival with a few friends near some stalls. These stalls in this section set up by the South Asian community. At around 7:30 PM, as the carnival on this day was starting to wind down, a gang of up to 50 youths began to rampage through the carnival streets in a coordinated fashion, attacking and robbing the unsuspecting carnival goers as fast as possible. Police say what this gang did was called steaming, where you run through a crowd whilst robbing them. It was said that some of these youths targeted Abdul's friend first, who was wearing a gold chain, and that is when Abdul stepped in to protect his friend. Suddenly, Abdul was set upon by the entire 50-man gang, who began punching and kicking him without mercy, all at once before they all fled. One of them did a sickening running blow to his head as he tried to crawl away to safety. Abdul Bhatti was taken to the hospital but sadly died of his injuries the next day, after suffering devastating brainstem injuries. The whole event that took place on the streets was caught on CCTV, which the police took a thorough review at, although no police was present during the actual event in person. The actual attack on Abdul was not caught on CCTV. The Chief Inspector of London said that the gang had been responsible for totally indiscriminate violence, as they rampaged through the crowded streets of West London. The Chief Inspector was also convinced that there was a racial hatred component to the attack, as none of the Caribbean stores were attacked, and so the police investigated Abdul's death as a possible hate crime. Abdul's brother-in-law said that the family had been told of the possible race motive, but told the media that, at the end of the day, it is criminals and mindless thugs who are intent on mayhem and robbery. That's the overwhelming fact here. Over the next few months following the aftermath of the Notting Hill Carnival, many arrests were made due to the violent disorder that occurred over that week. Over 200 people were arrested for petty crimes and assaults. Many of those people were questioned over their possible involvement with the attack on Abdul Bhatti. The men identified from the CCTV called themselves the Hackney Posse. The area of Hackney is over 10 miles away and on the opposite side of West London. Unfortunately, police could not find enough evidence to charge anyone with the actual murder of Abdul Bhatti. 9 men from the Hackney Posse who ran through the streets and robbed people were charged with violent disorder, where they received sentences of up to 21 months. Understandably, Abdul's family were outraged at the fact that some or all of these men were involved in the murder, but due to lack of evidence they will receive lesser sentences and be out in less than 2 years. The police at the time said they will continue investigating, but 24 years later nobody has been charged since, and it does not look like anyone will sadly be charged for the murder of Abdul Bhatti. Notting Hill Carnival 2000 destroyed more than the lives of Abdul Bhatti and his family. 21-year-old Greg Watson had travelled in with his partner and a few friends for the Notting Hill Carnival and enjoyed the entire day. He had a month-old baby daughter and was a delivery man. As the day began getting dark, they followed one of the last remaining floats on their way home. As they began walking, a group of youths stood on the side, began pestering and grabbing young girls walking by. Greg at this moment intervened to aid the girl in his group who had been grabbed and intimidated for her number. He had walked over calmly just to defuse the situation. He had made no hostile action. One of the youths, who was described as hooded and muscular, told someone to hold on and rushed at Greg, where he grabbed him and then stabbed him with a long kitchen knife he had hidden in his jeans. He was stabbed fatally in the abdomen. A girl nearby screamed, "You stabbed him," where the attacker then replied, "So what?" At this moment in time, Abdul Bhatti had just been murdered 2 hours before. Greg Watson, the young father, called out for an ambulance as the murderer and his group ran down the road. Greg sadly died from the knife wound. The entire attack was caught by CCTV, and Greg's partner gave permission to the TV show Crime Watch to air the footage in the hopes of catching the hooded murderer. The investigation and coverage of Greg Watson's murder seemed a lot more thorough than Abdul Bhatti's, as police were able to track down and arrest the murderer they think was in the footage. Apparently, when police went to the address, he was found hiding in a wardrobe. Sean Sephinis was put on trial for the murder of Greg Watson. Unfortunately, justice failed Greg and his family that day. The prosecution had only one witness, and 12 people in an identification parade failed to identify the defendant. It was further heard that the only witness had admitted he had not seen the man stab Greg Watson, and that he had only identified him after watching the CCTV video of the attack. The judge then stopped the case and instructed the jury to find Mr. Sephinis not guilty, saying that the only evidence against him was uncertain and inconsistent. Sean Sephinis, who everyone believed was the killer, walked free due to uncooperative witnesses and changing stories. He would have multiple arrests in the next 20 years for all types of crime. Sadly, that is also where the case of Greg Watson ends, and it is officially an unsolved case. On a day that was supposed to be full of unity, love and entertainment, a lack of police presence and monitoring cost 2 young men their lives. They were unfairly murdered for protecting others because the proper resources were not there to help instead. Unfortunately, the police seem to have given up entirely on charging anyone with the murders of Abdul Bhatti and Greg Watson. Notting Hill Carnival has dealt with this problem for years, but Notting Hill Carnival 2000 still remains as one of the saddest unsolved days of crime in London history.